After more than a year in a Cairo jail, the three Al Jazeera journalists convicted over their coverage of the crackdown on the supporters of ousted Islamist President Mohamed Morsi were finally released earlier this month. But only one of them, the Australian Peter Greste, was deported from Egypt. The other two, producer Peter Mohamed and Egyptian-Canadian journalist Mohamed Fahmy, face a retrial due to start next week. This was the moment when the office of Mohamed Fahmy, the Cairo bureau chief of Al Jazeera, was raided, and he was arrested along with the Australian journalist Peter Greste and Egyptian producer Peter Mohamed. The grainy video, complete with sinister music, was broadcast by national television in Egypt on that night, December the 21st, 2013. The three men were charged with spreading false news in support of the banned Muslim Brotherhood and supporting terrorists, and held in prison. There was an outcry, and when they were sentenced last June to 7 years in jail, there was shock and anger in the court and protests across the world. Amnesty International called the trial and sentence a vindictive farce. Fahmy held dual Egyptian and Canadian citizenship, and in December he gave up his Egyptian passport in the hope he would be deported to Canada. Then, this month, Egypt's highest court overturned the convictions, announcing that the trial of the three men had been unfair. Peter Greste was deported to Australia, but Mohamed and Peter were bailed pending a retrial. Since being bailed, Fahmy has accused his employers Al Jazeera of epic negligence and of being partly to blame for his imprisonment, saying the Qatar-owned news organisation was sympathetic to the banned Brotherhood and used his material to wage a media war against Cairo. Well, joining us now from our studio in Cairo is Mohamed Fahmy, the former bureau chief for Al Jazeera English in Cairo, who was released by Egyptian authorities 2 weeks ago after 400 days in jail. Good evening. I'd like to take you back to the cage in the court when the judge handed you down a 7-year sentence. Did you fear the worst, or was the length of that sentence entirely unexpected?
No, it was totally unexpected for me. I was planning my wedding, and in the last visit we were preparing for who we were going to invite, and it felt like a punch in the face in every sense of the word. I was told that the courtroom was filled with people, but it just went silent. It was really a shock, considering that there wasn't any concrete evidence, and as you've all seen, the trial was more of a show trial.
So you had 400 days in a high-security prison. How were you treated?
Overall, it was good treatment. There was not any physical abuse or anything like that. However, the first month was very challenging because Peter, Mohamed, and myself spent it in the terror wing of the super maximum prison Scorpion with hardcore jihadists who just came from Syria and Libya. And it was pretty tough to be a journalist with them. However, we made the best out of it in the sense that we were interviewing them and trying to do what we do.
Do what you do while you were in jail. But I wonder if you were aware of the huge groundswell of support from journalists all over the world. And I wonder, too, if it hadn't been for the Australian Peter Greste, do you think your plight would have received such global attention?
Oh, yes. I mean, the coverage of... We heard snippets of such coverage inside. When you're in solitary confinement and you hear that your plight is being covered globally, that really raises your morale. And, it was very interesting to realize that we're now fighting for a bigger cause, and we have, global support. Having Peter with us was good because he's a recognized journalist. And, I've had support from CNN after I've been working with them for 3 years, and other channels as well. And it was great to know that we're not forgotten, and that is what I plan to do now when I'm released, is to also highlight the plight of other journalists that were left behind us in the prison.
You possibly, we're going to come on to the fact you face a retrial next week unless there's a deportation to Canada, which I want to come on to. But after you received bail, you were critical of Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera's response was that you could have shut that bureau at any moment.
Well, when I came to the Marriott as the bureau chief on the first day, there was a frantic staff there that didn't know why they were there. And, you know, I offered Al Jazeera that I can go to the authorities and, you know, open a dialogue and explain to them that we are separate from the Arabic network, you know, and that we are, you know, list the journalists that are there. And my first request, and on behalf of the whole team, that our material does not broadcast on the Arabic banned Al Jazeera Mubashir arm. That was ignored. The first time they removed the videos, and I have submitted to you some videos and emails that prove that this continued for until we got, you know, at least 6 times until we got arrested. And I kept haggling and, you know, taking my concerns to the management, and, you know, that continued. And the epic negligence is not just before the arrest in issues that made it more difficult for us in court. During the trial as well, I had issues with the lawyer that Al Jazeera hired for us. So, and
yes,
he was.
just to clarify,
He was not. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to clarify, the Al Jazeera statement, you could have stopped work at any time if you had concerns. Just to clarify that. However, let's move on now, because at the point where you had to relinquish Egyptian citizenship, you waved the Egyptian flag in the court, and so what you seem to be saying was that you really reluctantly gave up your Egyptian citizenship, but if you had the chance to be deported, you would take it. I mean, is that the case?
I was requested, they asked me to drop the citizenship. I did not request that. And they made it very clear that that is your only way out of this, you and Peter. And we were told that it was going to happen. And my fiancée quit her job, and we started booking flights to Canada. And you heard the Foreign Minister of Canada say it was imminent. And then suddenly I found myself on the charge sheet again and back to court. Now, why I raised the Egyptian flag is because I have been, you know, put in this frame that I'm a Qatari agent, you know, a guy that sold his country, Egypt, and I wanted the judge to be very clear that that is not the case, you know. And when they did take the citizenship, they said the nationality is in the heart, not a piece of paper. So that was a symbolic, you know how they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, that's exactly what I was trying to do. But back to the political aspect of the case. This case is not just about the infringement of freedom of speech when you put 3 journalists in the cage who have not committed any crimes. It's also an aspect that has not been promoted by free AJ staff, which is the political aspect. You have Qatar is warring against Egypt, and we are caught in the middle. The best example for that is
we're
the
running
fact
out of
that
time.
their own lawyer, yes, go
I'm
ahead.
running out of time. I want to ask you one very quick question. Very quick question.
Yes.
You're due to appear in court next week. Do you think you'll be off to Canada before then?
I want to know why Qatar has sued Egypt while we were in the cage against their lawyer's advice. This is why we're pawns in this war. Yes, I'm still working on 2 strategies. The fact that I want to be deported, and I'm fighting for my defense in court. So I'm hoping that happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.